Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. Imagine waking up to your $90,000 dream car being demolished with a sledgehammer by your own neighbor because she claimed your exhaust was too loud. Sounds insane, right? Well, that's exactly what this homeowner association Karen did to my Dodge Challenger Hellcat. Let's dive right into the video. So I'm kind of ashamed to admit it here, but I am an HOA member. I live in their community and I follow all the rules to keep them off of my back, or I should say I did because I ended up in a bit of a bad situation with the HOA a while back. I'm a pretty basic guy, and the one thing that people would use to describe me is that I'm a car guy. I like watching car shows and I like seeing cool cars out in the wild, so of course once I had the money, I wanted to get myself a shiny new toy. I bought myself a Dodge Charger SRT Hellcat, and before you see Dodge Charger and think it's nothing fancy, I urge you to look it up. Sure, it's not a $300,000 European crazy thing, but this car cost me about $90K with all the options I wanted, and I love it. It looks clean, the exhaust is a little loud, which will be important later, but now Karen is the HOA busybody. She's actually not on the board or anything official, but she acts like she runs the place. Likes to be in everybody's business, and over the years I've tried a mix of ignoring her, avoiding her, and when I cannot do those, just nodding until she goes away. She seems control hungry, and micromanaging people following the rules seems to fuel her, car pun intended. I've mostly stayed under her radar, only getting a few crappy complaints because of her. Being cited once for my lawn getting cut too short, which I didn't think was even a thing. And ironically, it was to avoid a complaint for it being too long. She's just full of complaints, though none of them ever seem to go anywhere official since she's not actually authorized to do anything. Ever since I got the car though, she has been making complaints of a different nature, rolling back to my car, and its loud exhaust is where she has a problem. And I will try to make that my last car pun. She's complaining that the exhaust on my new car was too loud. Telling me that she's bringing her complaints directly to the HOA president. And yes, fine, the exhaust makes some noise, but I'm not just revving an engine or doing something intentional to be annoying. Or doing it at crazy hours in the day. I'm not hurting anybody and only bothering her. She started to linger outside of my house, taking photos of my car. I guess she thought photos would somehow prove noise levels to the HOA, which didn't really make any sense to me. I also just want to point out at this point that I did look at the HOA bylaws, and there's zero in there about car exhausts making noise. The only noise-related thing is that noise in excess after 11:30 p.m. is not allowed, and this is not in excess and it's not happening that late, so it doesn't apply. That never stopped an entitled neighbor before though. She was actually leaving notes under my windshield about the dangers of noise pollution, mainly citing how it makes a neighborhood look bad and can attract criminals or some crap. She probably made the statistics up. And well guys, I would agree with that actually, because apparently it attracted criminals like this entitled Karen, so maybe she's not 100% wrong there. The tension was building as she seemed to just be stalking my house, giving me citations that I was not gonna pay since I didn't break a rule and she had no authority to issue them anyway. She seems obsessed with me, like, isn't there a dog off a leash you can go complain about instead? It was like a stalemate, nothing was really happening, and I wish it stayed that way. One afternoon I was inside on my computer just watching videos, and Karen showed up with a sledgehammer. I did not even notice she was on my property until I heard a smash and my car alarm going off. By the time I got outside, she clearly had gotten a few good hits in already. Now I had a choice. I could go outside and face a Karen with a sledgehammer, risking my face and bones. Or stay inside and just watch as she destroyed my car. The latter won for a couple more hits, but then I managed to get outside. And by the way guys, if you were in this crazy situation, what would you do? Let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, please don't forget to like the video. Either way, I screamed, "Get the hell away from my car now!" Karen, "I have the rights to do this. The HOA bylaws give me permission to quiet the problem. I cannot sleep because of this loud thing." Me, "It's parked in a driveway, it's not making any noise. Stop it now." It was a little too late though, because even though she stopped after one more hit for emphasis. My beautiful car was now destroyed beyond anything I've seen before. The doors, hood, windshield, nothing was left without damage, and the exhaust pipe was hit several times and bending the wrong way. I don't even know how it was still fully attached, to be honest. I just stood there for a second, completely frozen, circling the car like maybe if I looked long enough it would magically fix itself. I wanted to cry. I wanted to curl in a ball and just let Karen win. I was calling my brother and telling him what happened and sending him photos and videos of the car. I was a mess and I just didn't know what to do. I'd never been in a situation like this before and I was panicking. Thinking I couldn't do anything aside from pace and cry and give up. Again, my brain shifted and I didn't want that. I didn't even want to call the police right away and have Karen arrested. Karen had ruined my happiness and I wanted to ruin hers. I wanted revenge. I wanted karma to punch her in the face for me. It probably seemed creepy, but I was somehow crying and laughing at the same time. I don't even know why I was laughing, just that I was and I couldn't control it. I thought I had actually snapped for a few moments before everything started to calm down. I knew that being upset right now wasn't gonna help, and kicking myself for not noticing and stopping her before it happened was not good for me. I took photos of the damage and I went right over Karen's head to the HOA board president. The first thing was confirming that the complaints I was given were by her and not actually sanctioned by the HOA. Then I showed them the damage she did, claiming that the board gave her permission. They were gonna file their own report, but told me that I needed a police report to get any further with them. I don't know the legal crap, but I did it and got a police report that my car was damaged and my claim was that Karen did it. I didn't think the police could help much, but I was mistaken. Now, Karen, you would think, would start denying it the moment she realized she could be in trouble, but no, in her mind she had done an amazing thing and was extremely proud of herself. I will get back to the police in a second, but first I want to talk about the HOA board investigating Karen and what happened with all of that. The HOA board took the complaint seriously. They called an emergency meeting and asked me to provide everything I had, the photos of the car afterwards and copies of every ridiculous complaint she had filed over the past few months. I handed it all over. People were surprised, but Karen seemed cool. She just started talking like she was a hero or something and saved the community from some crazy person making noise. Almost nobody else even realized my exhaust was loud, again citing the bylaws that she was following. It didn't take long for them to see the truth. Karen had completely misinterpreted the bylaws, appointed herself as some kind of unofficial enforcer, and basically turned into a vigilante in the neighborhood. The board confirmed in writing that she had no authority to do what she did. In fact, they said that if she didn't pay for the damage, they would pursue having her banned from the community entirely. Finally, I felt like things were shifting in my favor. Meanwhile, the police officer assigned to my case was a legend. We didn't just file a report, he came by to inspect the car in the driveway. He looked at the damage, shook his head and muttered something about people with too much time on their hands, and then he asked me for any witnesses. Luckily, one of my neighbors had seen Karen walk up with the sledgehammer and take a few swings. They told the police they saw everything and were willing to testify that it was definitely Karen with the sledgehammer that was the nail in the coffin. Several months later, after the case got reviewed, Karen got her official notice for felony vandalism charges. I'll admit, part of me wanted to watch her face when she read it. She couldn't believe the cops were actually involved. She tried to spin a story about self-defense against noise pollution, but the HOA board had already shredded that argument. Karen eventually pled guilty to felony vandalism, though her lawyer managed to get the sentence reduced to probation and restitution, but she had to pay for the Hellcat repairs plus additional compensation for the stress and harassment she caused. I hired a top detail shop to bring my Hellcat back to showroom condition. Getting the car fixed was way more complicated than I expected. It took months and was exhausting dealing with insurance, finding parts and coordinating with the body shop. Every time I got a call that one thing was fixed, it seemed the list of what was still to go was constant. Dents had to be banked out, glass replaced, parts had to be waited for, a new exhaust had to be put in. Any other car fanatics like me might understand how upsetting it was. Even after the satisfaction of Karen getting charged, it doesn't just magically fix everything. I did end up getting the car back and it seemed and drove just like the first day I got it. That was finally the day that I started to feel okay again. The icing on the cake? The HOA made it clear to Karen that any more incidents would result in her being banned from the community. No more petty complaints, no more spying on neighbors, and no more noise complaints. She learned the hard way that entitlement and sledgehammers don't mix with community rules or the law, and now every time I fire up the Hellcat I smile a little extra knowing that I followed the rules, stood my ground and didn't let a Karen bully me or destroy my property. And the next one is a petty revenge / malicious compliance story which is titled, "I found something my ex-husband accused me of destroying and I returned it." So my marriage, we were both in our 30s, this is important, had problems right away. One of the manifestations was him berating me for not going to an elite university. I went to a very good undergrad and even better grad school, had not finished at that point, but he went to one of the best schools in the country, known for graduates with a chip on their shoulder. That was really all he had on me, and I would just laugh. Even his parents told him he was being a jerk and sounded like an idiot because I had an impressive education. Something I'd never felt the need to discuss before, so anyway, he became really competitive about his college and especially his friends from college, very few he was still in touch with, this was before Facebook, and he had this photo box full of memorabilia, cardboard, no lock or anything, I had a dozen or so myself. A normal thing would be to go through this and mine together and share memories and stories and bond. I did not really care about what was in the box, and college stories are boring when you weren't there, but I would have listened. But the box became a symbol of everything wrong with him, constantly saying I'm not good enough for his college friends. At some point he forbid me to look in the box, and of course I didn't take this well. Telling me I was not good enough to see what's in the box was like kerosene. It got brought up in every fight. Like a death spiral of, "You're jealous of my friends. Your friends suck and I wouldn't like them anyway." I didn't say I was the hero in this story. Fast forward through years of abuse, we moved on to more spectacular fights and the box fell pretty far down the list, but then for some reason one day he went up to the attic and couldn't find his box. He said I threw it away because I was jealous and petty. I didn't, but after a few years of this he managed to convince me maybe I did. That's how abuse works. "And you threw away my box." Went back into heavy rotation. I begged his forgiveness and fell deeper into depression over the depths to which my life had sunk, and then finally got a divorce. Cops, ROs, the whole 9 yards. I healed and moved on. Years later, I sold my house, it was mine before, and when I was packing up I found the damn box. I had such an emotional reaction, my legs actually buckled. I sat on the floor and wept. My boyfriend was really sweet about it. He didn't know about the box. It is so ridiculous and I was so ashamed, but mostly I had put it all behind me by then. Until it all came rushing back. I called a mutual friend and asked him to come get the box so they could get it to him. People suggested I should just throw it away out of spite, but I had something to prove. Before I turned it over, I put copies of 2 unpublished essays I wrote about what he did to me, along with a handwritten note that said, "I knew you did not have the balls to kill me." And I sold your D&D books. Who he's gonna tell? I mean, he probably will, but then he has to admit what's in the essays, and he's the 52-year-old man complaining 10 years post-divorce that his ex-wife sold his D&D books. And the next one is a really good malicious compliance story that is titled, "I asked for 3 days off and they asked for a doctor's note, so I have way more than 3 days off now." So my job is very mentally taxing and I also have my own mental health issues, so I try my best to balance. But I just want to help, so I get caught up taking more responsibilities that I'm actually able to. A couple weeks ago, I realized my mental health is in steep decline. I was ignoring the signs to push through, but anyone with mental health issues knows that you can only ignore signs for so long. I tried to get ahead of a mental crash and talk to my supervisor to tell them that I need 3 days off, and as I had the weekend off after the days I requested, I figured that might be enough to get a good rest and reset. I did tell my supervisor why I needed the days, burnout, mental health and so on, and they said they understood and would get back to me. They contact me back, and I say they because right now I technically have 2 supervisors running my division, and say they can probably give me Wednesday, Thursdays, but that they couldn't give me Friday. I ask if we can do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday instead, and I could work the Friday, have my long weekend, and that should still be fine. They say they will get back to me, and I get a text soon after to ask me to help cover other shifts. And I obviously can't, so I decline. They get back to me the next day. "We can get your shifts covered for Wednesday and Thursday, but not Tuesday, and you have to make up the hours." That was the last straw. I just broke. I was asking for a break because I was working too much, because it was hard for me to say no. I even called them, they had me on speaker, in tears and explained further why I need the days. I've been going through trauma therapy and my mental health has been declining. I told them that I had spoken to my doctor and that my doctor said I was showing signs of burnout and recommended some days off, which is true, as I talked to him the day before. All they heard was "doctor" and said, "We need a doctor's note." Okay, fine then. Good thing I have another appointment. I had to work that day and just defeated because they couldn't find anyone to cover my shifts. I talked to my doctor and he says that he can tell I am in distress and he puts me on 2 weeks of leave immediately. They didn't look pleased when I handed in my doctor's note. That was 2 weeks ago and I went back to the doctor and he extended my leave for at least another month. 'Cause you know, straw broke the camel's back and my mental health just went down the drain. Oh, also, when I gave them my doctor's note with 4 weeks on it, one of them wouldn't even look at me and the other one just said, "Oh, doctor's note, thanks." And the next one is an HOA pro-revenge story that you don't want to miss. And by the way, if you've watched until here, I would very much appreciate it if you could post some star emojis in the comments if you want to show your support. When I moved into my suburban neighborhood, I expected peace and quiet. Instead, I walked into a petty dictatorship run by our HOA president, Todd. Todd was the worst kind of leader, the kind who loved power but hated accountability, which, by the way, sounds like every HOA ever, and he enforced ridiculous rules like fining people $200 for leaving their trash cans out a minute past 9 AM but blatantly ignored the rules when it suited him. His own yard was a mess of unpermitted structures and his fence was taller than allowed by city ordinances. But Todd's true sin? Using the HOA as his personal piggy bank. At first, I tried reasoning with him. My fence was slightly off color because the approved stain was not available and he fined me $500. I explained, provided receipts and asked for leniency. Todd smirked and said, "Rules are rules," and walked away. That is when I decided that I would take him down, not with screaming or public arguments, but methodically, legally, and in a way he would never recover from. Step 1. Become the inside man. Todd's first mistake was underestimating me. I volunteered for the HOA board under the guise of wanting to get involved in the community. I played the part of the eager, naive newbie perfectly. For 2 years I attended every meeting, quietly observing how Todd operated. I learned that he controlled the board by bullying other members and burying them in paperwork. He would push through votes when only his allies were present and conveniently lose paperwork submitted by dissenting homeowners. I kept my head down, took detailed notes, and waited. My goal was to outlast his term as president, so I could begin making changes. Then I discovered Todd's second mistake. He was not just a bully, he was a thief. Step 2. Follow the money. Todd loved to brag about how he kept the HOA's finances in order, but something did not add up here. The annual HOA fees were high, much higher than in similar neighborhoods, but the common areas were falling apart. The pool was closed half the summer due to maintenance issues and the landscaping looked like it had not been touched in months. I started digging. As the HOA treasurer, Todd had access to all the accounts, but he was notoriously caggy about sharing financial details. I asked for the budget during a meeting and Todd laughed it off, saying, "Don't worry, I've got it under control." I filed a formal request for the financial records, which, under HOA rules, he was required to provide. Weeks went by with no response, and that's when I started talking to neighbors. It turns out I was not the only one suspicious. Over a dozen homeowners had requested access to the budget over the years, only to be ignored. One neighbor claimed that Todd had used HOA funds to install a new patio at his house, while another swore that he had seen Todd's kids at the community pool during its maintenance closure. Armed with these suspicions, I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, forcing Todd to provide the records. He stalled, but I was not backing down here. Step number 3, build the case. When Todd finally handed over the financial documents, they were a mess. Invoices were missing, payments were mislabeled, and some expenses were downright bizarre. A $15,000 landscaping fee paid to a company that did not even exist. Thousands spent on administrative costs with no explanation. I cross-referenced the HOA's bank statements with public records and then found the smoking gun. Todd was funneling money to his personal accounts. Even better, I discovered that Todd had been inflating contractor fees, pocketing the difference, and splitting the profits with his buddy, a shady contractor who handled most of the HOA's maintenance. I compiled everything into a detailed report, complete with spreadsheets, photos, and notarized statements from neighbors who had seen Todd's antics firsthand. Step 4. The coup. I waited for the annual HOA meeting, which was typically a snooze fest attended by only a handful of homeowners. But this time though, I made sure that people showed up. I spent weeks knocking on doors, explaining what Todd had been up to. I did not share everything, just enough to get people angry and curious, and on the night of the meeting, the room was packed. Todd started the meeting like usual, droning on about how difficult it was to manage the HOA and how much he had sacrificed for the community. That is when I stood up. I calmly asked if he could explain some discrepancies in the budget. Todd was laughing nervously and said, "I don't think this is the time or place." I replied, "Actually, Todd, it's the perfect time." I handed out copies of my report to everyone in the room. The mood shifted instantly. People started reading, whispering, and then shouting. Todd tried to regain control, but it was too late. I called for a vote to remove him as president, and by the end of the night, Todd was out. Step 5. The final blow. After Todd was removed, we hired an independent auditor to go through the HOA's finances. They confirmed everything. Todd had embezzled over $50,000, mismanaged tens of thousands more, and committed multiple counts of fraud. We reported him to the police and filed a civil lawsuit to recover the stolen funds, but it did not end there. Todd's shady contractor buddy was also exposed and banned from doing business in the county. Todd had to sell his house to pay restitution and legal fees. His name became a running joke in the neighborhood and no one would touch him professionally. With Todd now gone, we restructured the HOA to prevent another dictator from taking over. We implemented term limits, required multiple board members to approve financial decisions, and created an online portal so all homeowners could access budgets and meeting minutes. The aftermath? Well, every time I walk past Todd's old house, now owned by a lovely family, I smile. The pool is open, the landscaping is beautiful, and the HOA fees are lower than ever. Todd, meanwhile, moved to a neighboring town, where he reportedly tried to join another HOA board only to be laughed out of the room when someone googled his name. Justice was not just served, it was plated, garnished, and savored. And the next one is a small petty revenge story. And by the way guys, if you still enjoy these HOA revenge stories, then please don't forget to like the video, because that would help me tremendously. My crotchety old man of a neighbor has harassed multiple families out of this neighborhood over the years and had been trying to do the same to me for the first few years I lived here. This included calling the police for everything, like my grass being an inch too tall, and once I've lived here for 9 years, and this is the story of how I finally got him to leave me alone a couple years ago. So basically, my final straw was that he put up a camera on his privacy fence on his deck that pointed directly into my backyard and refused to move it. He also threatened to shoot my dogs that were never outside alone and always either on a leash or in the backyard with me. Game on, dude, I finally had enough. So basically, I proceeded to sign his address up for every possible spam mail/emailing list I could find: the Satanic Church, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Playboy, tons of other adult stuff, and lots of other places that would scare an older religious couple. And plus tons of other mailing lists. I spent like 5 hours just signing his address up for random mailing list stuff. I then had one of those anonymous 5-pound boxes of elephant poop sent to his house, and I know it got there because I was off work the day it got delivered. I feel bad that the poor mail lady had to have that in her truck for any amount of time in the middle of a heat wave in July in MO, but that was a sacrifice I was willing to make. I watched her carry it like it was a bomb to my neighbor's porch and practically throw it at their door. Stepped out into my carport to spy when my neighbor went to pick it up and heard their reaction. It was priceless, but I then got even craftier. I went to Wally World and picked up a little corrugated metal sign that was like 3 feet by 2 feet from the craft department, as well as some of those wooden letters, spray paint and construction glue. I proceeded to set up shop in my carport at like 11 at night, and that is only about 10 feet from his bedroom wall. All the houses are the same design on my street, so I know the master bedroom is on the wall closest to my house. And absolutely blast Avatar, a Swedish metal band that is awesome, at top volume with the speaker pointed at his house while crafting my little sign. I can see through the trees and between the houses to the next street over that you're required to take to get to my street, dead-end street, and kept an eye out until I saw a cop car coming. Turned off my lights and music and went inside for like 20 minutes. The cop did not even knock on my door because when he got there was no noise complaint to act on. After he left, I got back to crafting and blasting music. I made a sign that said F off, and once all the spray paint, letters and glue was dry, I hung it from an old swing set frame and pointed it at his camera that was watching my backyard. And to deal with the camera, well, you wanna be a creepy dude? Okay, I got you. I waited until like 1 AM the next night and then stripped down to nothing but my panties and stood in my backyard and stared at his camera for like 15 minutes straight in nothing but my undies. I don't think he enjoyed the view. The camera was taken down the next day. I have not heard a peep from that guy or gotten the cops called on me for nonsense since. And the next one is a petty revenge story, which is titled, "Coworker wanted to take it easy when we were flat out." So I work in a local convenience store, and yesterday we were crazy busy. There were 4 of us working, myself, the shift lead, who I will call SL, and my 2 colleagues, A and K. SL was doing all the management tasks, myself and A were doing our set tasks, and K, who was doing an overtime shift, got asked to do a nice easy task that should take half an hour maximum. K decided to stretch it out for an hour and 45 by hiding in the toilets, playing on his phone and completely ignoring the tills, while myself and A were a ragged team working to complete our tasks and covering the tills. As we finished our tasks, our delivery arrived, and it was a big one with lots of heavy cages to haul in. Normally I would offer to help SL, but I had enough at that point. I casually mentioned to the shift lead, if K helps you bring in the delivery, I could do the scan that the team yesterday didn't have time to do. K couldn't talk his way out of it, and as he went outside, it started absolutely chucking it down with rain. He came in after the delivery, exhausted and absolutely soaked, while A and I were grinning away. Dude, if you had pulled your weight, I would have never volunteered you. I may be an old bat, but fair foe. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.